So again, another doubleheader last night where 2 late inning leads blown. Another awful performance. Wait a minute. We're talking about my softball team right now. I'm sorry. Let's talk about the Mets. Yeah, let's talk about the Mets.
Meet the Mets. Meet the Mets. Step right up.
All right, and welcome to the 3rd edition of Mets Update with Toots. A happier edition, as the Mets have, since the last episode of Mets Update with Toots, have gone 6-0, believe it or not. A 6-game win streak since last week's episode, and things have completely turned around on a dime. All of a sudden, everything went from nothing clicking to now everything's clicking, believe it or not. And they've brought their record now to 11 wins and 13 losses, as opposed to 5-13 when we recorded this episode last week. So things are definitely looking up. Specifically, the 6-0 start started with Jason Bay. Jason Bay came back last Thursday, and really this lineup has clicked big time with Bay in. I believe they're scoring 6.5 runs a game, averaging, since Bay's return. And they're really taking care of business. Bay has sparked them. Davis is on fire. Wright's hitting pretty well, although we did go 0 for 5 and then 1 for 4 the last 2 nights. But Beltran and Reyes have been consistently good since the beginning of the year. The lineup is really starting to click. With Bay in there, it really lengthens it out, especially now with Murphy playing second base almost every day and him hitting the ball. You're looking at a very strong lineup. 1 through 6, this lineup can hit with anybody. So the lineup is really clicking. And the starting pitching has started coming around. All of a sudden, during this little run here, the pitchers are getting into the 7th inning. Everyone's getting into the 7th inning. And it's amazing that when your starting pitching starts to click, your bullpen comes along. When the bullpen's got to come in the 4th and 5th inning every game like they were earlier in the season, that's when your bullpen's going to look like garbage. But now the bullpen, all of a sudden, roles are more defined. Looks like Isringhausen has been great in the 8th inning. K-Rod's been great closing the games. And also he goes now to Buchholz and Pedro Beato before those two. So they have about 4 arms they definitely trust in that bullpen now. So Terry's definitely got some options. You look at last night's ball game, a game when they were down 2-1 in the 8th inning. Reyes gets called out at third base on a triple that obviously the umpire blew the call. The Mets that I know, the Mets of the last couple of years, fold up and die at that point if that momentum's taken away. But what did they do? They tied the game with a Murphy home run, lost the tie again in the bottom of the inning when the Washington scored a run to take a 3-2 lead. And then they came up in the top of the 9th and really did everything right. They got guys on base, successful bunt, outs that scored runs. They had 2 of them, a sac fly by Chin Lung Hu, of all people, and then Josh Tolley with an RBI ground out. And then Murphy comes up with another big knock to really extend the lead to 6-3 in the 9th. And K-Rod nailed it down. Last night was a great win. Great win all around. Everybody contributed to that. So things have really been looking up for this team. I mean, they usually say teams aren't as good as they are when they're on a win streak and aren't as bad as they are when they're on a losing streak. So, I mean, I'll take that. 6 in a row, I'll take it. They got to keep it going. They got 1 more in Washington tonight before they go to Philadelphia, where I believe they'll face Halladay and Lee in that series. So you'd really want to grab tonight in Washington just to, go into Philadelphia. And, if you drop 2 of 3, you could live with it. You could live with that before coming home. So I really want tonight's ball game. But like I said, things are looking very strong. Lineup great. Starting pitching's looking good. Bullpen's looking good. Bench is contributing. Collins looks, he's fired up. He's been thrown out once already. He almost got thrown out last night. Things are just looking up. It's become fun again to watch this team. They're out of last place. They're in 4th now, but still early in the season. I'm not worried about standings. I just want to see the team consistently play well, which they've begun to do. Have they done it against the doormats of the National League? Yeah, but you know what? You got to beat these teams. That's how it starts. You got to beat the teams you're supposed to beat. So, a great week. A great week to be a Met fan, really. They're back on the map a little bit here, battling their way back to 500, and we'll see where it goes from here. Contributions from everybody. It's really been fun to watch Met games this week. So we'll see where it goes from here. All right, and welcome to the new email session, the mailbag I like to call it, where you can email me questions, comments, anything you really want at metsupdatewithtoots@gmail.com. And I received 3 this week, so we'll go over all of them. The first one is actually from my cousin Dave, who happens to be a big Mets fan, but I appreciate him, and we'll let him be the first one. His question basically was that he felt confidence last night, actually, for the first time in a while, going into that 9th inning in last night's ball game. He asked me how confident I was, and you know what, Dave? I was confident. The way they've been playing, the way things have gone lately, it really builds a little confidence, in the team. And I felt good going into the top of the 9th that they were going to get something done. And they certainly did. So that answers your question now. We got one from Ricky from Yonkers emailed me. So this one's from Ricky. Who was your favorite Met growing up and why? Mine was Armando Benitez. He threw gas. Well, Ricky, you might be in the minority in that one because certainly fans remember Benitez, giving us heart attacks as we watch the games. But he did get the job done a lot. He just had a little problem in the big game, usually against the Braves, blowing them. But what are you going to do? But my favorite Met growing up, without question, is Piazza. I love Mike Piazza, bottom line. You can say whatever you want about him. But this guy really, when he got traded to the Mets, really put this team back on the map. Because they, in the mid to late 90s, they weren't very good. And Bobby Valentine had come along and they started to put it together a little bit. But then when they got Piazza in May of 98, it really put the Mets back on the map. And I believe they missed the playoffs by 1 game that year. They missed the wild card by 1 game. And then the next 2 years made the playoffs, including a World Series appearance in 2000. And Mike Piazza was right at the center of it. Always got clutch hits. You always felt confident with him up in a big spot. And, pretty much all Mets fans in my generation, especially, I was 12 years old when they got Mike Piazza. That's right around the time a kid really starts to really, if you're going to be a fan of a team, you're really going to start actually paying attention big at that age. And, when they got Piazza, I pretty much became, the hardcore Met fan I am today. So I would definitely have to say Mike Piazza. And the next question comes Steve, all the way from Cleveland. Wow, we got fans in Cleveland watching the show. Really appreciate that. And Steve says, what sort of moves would you make if you were in charge? What are your hopes for the front office over the next few seasons? Well, tough question, Steve, but it's a good one. It all depends basically on where they're at the trade deadline this year. That's going to be the telling tale. If they're in the race, I'd like to see them hold on to the veterans and see if they can make a run this year. But if they do fall out of the race, there are some pieces on the team that you should trade just to get some value back in the farm system. K-Rod is one of them. A team will be looking for an extra reliever at the trade deadline. Even if you look at a team like the White Sox, who don't even have a closer, they would love to have K-Rod. A guy like Beltran, who's 99.9 gone at the end of this year, who will probably go to the American League and DH. If you can get something back for him. Somebody will want to bat at the deadline, especially Carlos. The way he's playing, he looks healthy. Looks like he can actually still play the outfield a little bit, and he's hitting the ball well. So you have to trade those guys if you're out of the race, just to get something back, replenish the farm system a little bit going into the next year. And we'll see where it goes after that. I mean, there are some veterans on this team that, you could get rid of a Burdak, you can get rid of a starting pitcher, maybe a Chris Young or a Capuano. Guys like that aren't integral like pieces for the future that other teams can use for a stretch run. You try to trade those guys and, get some value back. And then see what your own young guys have down the stretch if the season, doesn't look like it's going to be a playoff-type season. So that concludes the mailbag session. I appreciate you guys for sending me questions. And please keep it going for next week's episode. Send me whatever you want again at metsupdatewithtoots@gmail.com. Odds are you send the question and I'll bring it up on the air. So that's going to conclude this week's episode. Again, a great week, a 6-0 week for the leading up to this episode. Mets are playing some good ball. We'll see where it goes from here. I mean, 11-13 now, from 5-13. 11-13 sounds really great. So let's keep it going, hopefully, and who knows where we'll be at next week. So keep watching, and let's go Mets. I'll see you guys next week.